This conference will now be recorded.
So hello everyone, it's Mohammad Zishan here, the chapter leader of MECA CFO Dubai. First of all, I warmly welcome you to this session on implementing analytics culture for data-driven decision, going to be presented by Mr. Jesper H. Sorensen. Please, can you make sure that you can listen our voice and see the screen? Please just leave a message in the chat box. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think they can hear. Okay, I think everyone can see the screen. Somebody told that they can't hear and they can't see the screen, but I think other people can see. Maybe you have some problem in your connection. Please just try to reconnect if you cannot see. Okay, so just before kicking off this session, I would just like to tell you a little bit about the logistics of this webinar. This is going to be a 1-hour live session on analytics culture for data-driven decision. Going to be presented by Jesper H. Sorensen. We will have a Q&A session at the end where you will get chance to have if you have any question regarding the session or on data or analytics, data science, you can just ask, or even during the session, if you have any question, just you can drop your message in the chat box, or alternatively at the end, you can just unmute yourself at the end of the session and you can speak. Just during the session, I humbly request you to please keep yourself on the mute mode in order to avoid any distractions or background noise, so that we can conduct the session very smoothly. So we are going to talk about data analytics. As we all know, data science and data analytics is a very emerging field, and it's of paramount importance for finance professionals to support their businesses in their operational and strategic decision making, and to act as their strategic business partner, or as Jesper discovered new term as analytics business partner, which he's going to discuss in detail now. So before starting the session, just I would like to give a brief introduction of Jesper. Jesper is a finance executive in a major Silicon Valley technology company where he's leading the finance team for one of its multi-billion-dollar businesses. He's also the co-founders of Finance Analytics Institute, an organization that fuses finance with analytics. He has a proven track record of advancing the analytics agenda and holds several analytics advisory positions, including advisory board member for Aurora Predictions and analytics expert for the International Institute of Analytics. Mr. Sorensen is a regular keynote speaker on next generation finance. I think you might all know it's very famous or popular on LinkedIn as well. And he also published numerous articles and research papers on analytics business partnering, and has co-authored the book Implementing an Analytics Culture for Data-Driven Decision, a manifesto for next generation finance. He has a master's degree in economics and management from the University of Aarhus, Denmark. He's certified Six Sigma Green Belt and certified in strategic direction and risk management from Stanford University, USA. And currently he is based in US and he's making the session from there. And just Jesper, before handing over the session to you, just I would like you to just give your views or during the session. Like, there's a buzzword in the market these days that data is the new oil, and like initially it's we can to equate data with oil, it makes sense at first glance, given the data driven success of tech companies like Google, Amazon, or Apple. But how exactly like we can compare data with oil, like, because oil, when we talk about oil, there are certain activities. If any oil company, they want to extract the oil, it includes drilling, extracting, refining, and then selling. So how can this analogy compare and works in the real life. So just I will hand over the session to you, Jesper.
Okay, thank you. Can you all hear me? We good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So data compared to oil, I would say, first of all, data is not a commodity like oil. Oil is a commodity. Data comes in a lot of different ways. So whether data is the new oil, it could be in terms of how important it is in the way that a lot of decisions taken. But if you think about this in terms of the complexity of data and how data is very different from one business to another, it's probably not going to be the new oil because it's probably never going to be a commodity, but it's super important. And you will see a lot of, if you look at LinkedIn and the articles that is published on LinkedIn at the moment, like a majority of them within the finance and accounting space is all around something related to how we utilize data to do analytics, whether that is big data, predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, these kind of things. So data is super important, and that's also why one of some of those big companies are very successful at the moment. Those companies sitting on data. So I think like step into the game. We need to step into the game right now in finance. If we don't step into the game, somebody else will come and take over our position if we don't figure out how to handle the data. So I think that's my view on that one. And again, Mohammed, as you said, it's about how you extract the data, how fast you can extract the data without touching it too much, how fast you can automate your reporting without touching it too much, because that's the only way how you really get in to learn the data when you're doing your analytics. And you want to make sure you have the right people and time for that. That's some of the stuff that I'll be covering in this session today. Okay, so with that, let's move here. Some notice here. You can read that afterwards. The agenda for today. I'm going through 4 topics here. One topic that we define as we call the analytics business partner, then the roadmap to an analytics culture. Then I'll talk about the analytics journey. And then last, I will cover an element that I call the power of benchmarking. It's extremely important. And that's one of the areas that we often forget when we look at this. There's a few areas that we often forget when we look at becoming an analytics powerhouse. Benchmarking is definitely one of them. But I will cover a few other topics here today that we often forget when we look at how we become this analytics powerhouse. So with that, the analytics business partner. So the analytics business. Can you all hear me? Okay. So the analytics business partner here. Let's start with the evolution of the partnering here. If we go back to the 90s, the way that we acted in finance was this recording and record keeping accounting, where the focus was on bookkeeping and reporting, and we want to make sure that we could support the business with accurate accounting and like being up to the standards within the accounting standards. Not necessarily a ton of value there. We were supporting and we were recording and reporting at that time. Then when we're getting into the 2000s, that is when we start to hear this partnering terms for the first time. I was involved in my first business partnering project and finance transformation project around the mid-2000s. And that one was all about that focus on being better to talk the business language now, so that we become a partner in the business. We build those relationships, and then we provide our information, our financial information, that contributed to decisions. So that's what I call the first generation partner here around 2000. As we move up here, the second generation partner, I call that one the finance business partner. You've probably all seen, like, there's a ton of articles out there, a lot of people who's talking about this, where the focus is about this financial information, how we use that to influence and challenge decisions. Extremely important. In order to do that, we need elements from the first generation as well. We still need that acumen. We still need the collaboration, stuff like that. But now we're also using our financial data to influence and challenge decisions. Basically here, we're trying to help the business, it could be the business grow by providing them information. The last one here, and that is a new one, and that's where we're standing right now. We're on our way into the 2020s. That's the third one here. We call that the analytics business partner. Focus now is on providing insight and predictions to impact the strategic direction for our business or the company. So what is insight? Insight is not something that the business is telling you. Insight is not you asking the business, why is it that your sale is up 10%, and then they will provide that information to you. That's information, that's not insight. Insight is something that you find in the data. Here, we got massive data out there. Data is flowing around all over in the system. It's not just finance who got access to data. Everyone got access to data today. But if you can use all of that data to provide some insight to the business that they don't know, that they use to take data-driven decision based on, that's insight. So it's analytics. It's something that is derived from analytics, something where you tell the business something that they don't know. And then predictions, or sometimes we use the word here, foresight as well, like providing some foresight that the business don't know what is going to happen in the future and how can we make that happen. So that is kind of the partnering evolution here. If we then think about this and going into what is the difference between finance business partnering and the analytics business partner, then the finance business partner normally don't go further than the first two steps here. We support the business, we report, we are accurate and timely when we report, we do simple analysis, variance analysis, we do bridges, we do cost controlling, we can dive down into our pivot tables, and we can tell what happened and where did it happen. And when we communicate, we are clear and concise when we communicate. We're stepping a little bit more up here, what I talked about with this first partnering role, the one where we start to understand the business operation and we do our teamwork out in the business and we collaborate with the business. That is where finance is today. Like, we've done a ton of benchmarking and surveys on this. This is what we see. We see finance being in this one, trying to get to the next level here. The analytics business partner, as you can see down the bottom here, covers everything. So the analytics business partner cover everything, that cover the full spectrum here. It's important that we can still report timely, accurate, and clean, because if we can't do that, you don't have any chance in front of the business if you talk about intelligence. So intelligence being business insight. If you provide business insight, an example could be the reason why our sales is up is because our performance, our growth is highly correlated with customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction, that's not financial data. That's non-financial data, often business operation data, marketing data. But if you can find those correlations, you start to be able to tell the business something that they don't know. And you can also tell them, if you find that correlation, if you can increase your customer satisfaction, which is something that they have influence on, by 1 point, then your sales might be growing by 10 points. That is some insight that they can use. Okay, so now we know what we need to start to focus on. That is customer satisfaction. If we can provide that insight, that's what we do as a starting point as an analytics business partner. We also do risk and opportunity management. Here we talk about both scenario analysis, but we also talk about Monte Carlo simulation. Like, when we are developing plans out into the future, we don't listen necessarily just to the business. We do this with predictive modeling and Monte Carlo simulation. In that way, everything is unbiased. So that's some of the stuff that we're doing here when we talk about risk and opportunity management. If we want to reach the top shelf here, we start to impact the strategic direction. We do that with innovation finance. We need to think about what systems that we need here in order to innovate finance. That's some of the stuff that I'll be talking about here in my next part. And we need to figure out, how do we think strategic so that we impact the strategic direction here. Like, we become that trusted partner that they always go to. We become kind of the glue in the organization. They never take any decisions without involving us. That's how we get up there. So what we want to do here is that we want to move from this finance business partner, where we focus on these elements, down to the left here, moving all the way up to the right, where we start to provide intelligence and something around strategy. This is how we move from providing hindsight information to providing insight to providing foresight. or how we move from what I define as a trusted scorekeeper, where we are just reporting hindsight information, to be the strategic partner here, where we start to provide insight and foresight. So that is the step that we need to figure out how we take. We need to get from this basics acumen up to intelligence strategy. Okay, moving on then. The important thing here is also to understand the evolution of analytics. So what happened in analytics over the last 40 years here? If we went back to the 80s, maybe some were in finance or accounting at that time that is on this call, maybe not. But at that time, it was all about what happened. It was standard reporting. We were putting out reports and we had the monopoly to report to the CEO. We don't have that anymore. There's a lot of data flowing around in the system. As we're getting into the 90s, Excel becomes the favorite tool for finance at that time. Stuff like pivot tables in Excel start to get developed that time, so we can drill down into the information, so we can tell not just what happened, but also where did it happen. Okay, visualization as well, like we can visualize this in charts and stuff like that. We move on in the 2000s. If we follow the evolution of analytics, that's where people start to look at statistics and correlation. In the mid-2000s, that's when I start to look at my statistical books from college and say, okay, how can I use some of these elements that I learned in college in my job today as a finance business partner? And then we start to get up there and can tell something about this. Why did it happen? That could be the correlations. It could be that we see some clusters here. We talk some of the simple statistics here, mean, max, standard deviation, stuff like that. We use these kind of things when we talk to the business. As we move further up here into the 2010s, we get we start to use elements that is called smoothing, which is basically a predictive analytics. But it's not that smoothing is a new concept that was developed here. Like some of the stuff with Whole Winter was developed back in the 70s, but never really used in the finance world. But now we want to become predictive as finance. So we want to do smoothing or regression, leading indicators, these kind of things as we get up there to the 10s. The new things that a lot of people is talking about, struggling with today, is how we can make it happen. And that's with the big data analytics. There's so much data out there. Our capabilities as human beings are not strong enough to understand that data. That's why we need big data analytics with artificial intelligence to help us, or simulation like Monte Carlo. So this is how we move from reporting up to optimizing the business, and that's how we move through these 4 phases of analytics with descriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics, predictive analytics, and prescriptive analytics. Hindsight information, insight, again, foresight, moving up here. That's again how we go from a trusted scorekeeper to a strategic partner. So another way to look at this, I looked at it before with some capabilities that we need to master, but there's also some analytics elements here that we need to master in order to get up there. What is important? It's important that we have this diverse skill set. So think about when you look at your team, you need to have somebody who can do kind of all of these things. We cannot just have people who wants to be up and to the right. We need those people, but there's not a lot of people where they can just be up and to the right. You need to staff your organization with the capabilities to cover all of this, both the evolution of analytics, but also the step that we looked at. We also need to figure out how we can cover all of these steps within our team. There's not one person who can play all of the roles. And then, of course, you need to update your toolbox. You need to advance your toolbox. Today, if you only have Excel, you will get to descriptive analytics. You will not get further. As we get up here, we start to implement other things that I will talk about when I get into that tool aspect in the presentation. Okay, so let's talk about the roadmap here. So how do we develop this analytics culture? There's 4 pillars here. It's relatively simple. Robert and I put this into a book that we call Implementing an Analytics Culture for Data-Driven Decisions. One of our comments in this book is analytics is here to stay. It is here to stay, whether we want it or not. It's complex, but we need to get there. It's here to stay. But the payoff for implementing analytics is large in dollars for the company, but it's also job satisfaction for us as finance, as well as job security. If we don't go here, somebody else will take your position in the future. So that's some of the stuff that is in the book here. Let me go through some of the elements in the book here with how we implement this analytics culture. There's basically 4 pillars. They're here: mindset, people, process, system. We need those 4 pillars to make data-driven decisions. If we don't have those 4 pillars, we cannot make data-driven decisions and we cannot implement an analytics culture. And it's the lowest of these pillars that define where we are. You'll see more of that later on as I go through the whole structure of how we implement this analytics culture. So first step, mindset. Again, you see some of the same words here. How do you move from a trusted scorekeeper to a strategic partner? There is our reporter, where we support the business. There's a commentator where we contribute to decisions. There's the advisor where we influence decision. And then there's a strategist where we impact. You can see some of the same words here is following us. We need leaders and we need finance executives with this kind of mindset. Want to move from just reporting accurate data to get better information, to get deeper information, insights, to get predictive information. So that's kind of the mindset model when we look at this. Our leaders need to have this mindset, and the mindset needs to be aligned all the way down the organization. So if we look at this in terms of mindset and our analytics intelligence, if we want to support, we're reporting time and accurate, we report. We're reporting numbers. If we want to contribute, it's efficient reporting with simple analysis. So I'm talking about diving down into your pivot tables, figuring out what happened and where did it happen. These kind of things is what we're talking about here as a commentator. We do analysis. If we want to influence, we're reporting with insight. We're the advisor. The analytics intelligence here is insight, something that the business don't know. If we want to move all the way up, we're reporting with foresight. We impact decisions. With a strategist, we predict what is going to happen in the future. That's the mindset. That's the first level. We want to make sure that we understand this and we have business leaders and finance executives who understand this. Okay, quality of the people. As I said before, we need to have different capabilities in the team. If we only have Excel experts, we can get to the commentator. We cannot get further than the commentator. If we have this auditor skill, we can get to the commentator as well. If we have this business collaborator, we can get a little bit further. We can get all the way up there, but we need something else. We need to have data analyst skills. So we need to understand how to do advanced analytics. We need to be able to storytell if we want to go all the way up there. We can come out to the business. If we can't tell the story, if we can't convince them where we want them to go, we don't have a chance. So we need to be able to tell a story here they want to listen to and they want to act based on. We want to make sure that we can develop insight when we get up here, and we want to make sure that we can develop foresight. So you need to have kind of all of these capabilities, the skill set, if you want to go all the way. If you are just the Excel jockey, you're down here, report a commentator. So think about that when you develop the team. Think about that in terms of what capabilities that you want to develop as yourself individually. Okay. Here's a few things. We need to align the mindset. As talked about, one person is not a culture. If we only have one person to do all these kind of things, you can't build a culture. And then don't forget, but don't waste high IQ people on low IQ tasks. Like if you have somebody who's insane smart who can do predictive analytics for you, let them do predictive analytics for you. Don't waste them on something else. There's enough people where we can have them to do the reporting and the simple analysis. And then an important thing here when we're doing predictive analytics, that is to allow risk taking. Predictive analytics is you're saying something about the future. If you don't want to take risk, you can't do it. Like you need to come out with a recommendation here to the business. And that can be scary the first time, but you need to try that. Okay, so process. I'm going to go relatively fast through the process here. So that's the third pillar, but it's extremely important, and that is where we often in finance don't pay enough attention. We want to have written processes for data governance, basically the data quality. How do we get the data? How do we make sure that the data is accurate so that we can do analytics based on it? But also decision governance. How can we make sure that when we have the data governance, who's taking decisions based on the data? We need that for the data-driven decisions. So here's a definition of data governance, right? Like we want to make sure that the data is timely, it's complete, it's accurate, it's accessible for us to do reporting and analytics. If it's not, then you're never going to do reporting analytics accurate. And then if the input is incorrect, the output is going to be incorrect. So that is extremely important. Data governance is extremely important. Make sure that you have written process around that. The same with the decision governance, right? We want to make sure that decision is taken based on analytics and not gut feeling or single case examples. You've probably been in businesses where a business leader will come to you and say, "Oh yeah, but there was this customer who did this and this and this last quarter, so that's probably going to happen to all of our customers this quarter." No, it's a single case example. It happened to one customer, but we often see that in our businesses that they're focusing in on one single example instead of looking at this holistic. What is the data telling us holistic? What is the analytics telling us? So that's one of them. Gut feeling decisions doesn't work. It needs to be data driven. So that's where decision governance comes in. And data governance, decision governance is often not very well documented in companies. Okay, last pillar is the systems. Now you can see I'm taking this mindset here and I'm linking the persona up to these as we saw onto the mindset. Now I'm going into what is the tool that you need. So if you want to play the reporter, you already have it. You have Excel and BI. You don't need more if you want to be a reporter. You can do that. You don't have to be efficient or anything. You can easily do that. If you want to become a commentator, you need a data visualization tool. Data visualization tools having two benefits. One of them is that you can be super efficient when you do this. When you load data in and when you can call it much faster up in Tableau or in Power BI, whatever we call these data visualization tools, you can be significantly more efficient in the way that you report numbers. But you can also, with data visualization tools, start to look at trends here. So that is some of the beautiful things about data visualization tools. They are not predictive. There's no predictive capability in this. If you want predictive capabilities, then you need a desktop statistical tool. Desktop statistical tool is a tool that is often an add-in to Excel, where you can do simple predictive analytics. You can maybe run Monte Carlo simulation. There's a lot of statistical stuff in that one where you can test different hypotheses and these kind of things. But a quite simple tool that works well on high-level data. If we want to work on big data and what is going on in this massive amount and millions of observations that we have in our Excel sheet, we need something more powerful that we can load the data into. That is what we call a discovery, visualization, and analytics tool, so a DVA tool. So that is kind of the system. So let's go back here, and then we put another axis on this one, where we can see if we want to get up to the strategist right now, you need some more toolbox power in order to get up there. With this, now we can point to the roadmap here to build an analytics culture for data-driven decisions. We put our people and our processes on here. We want to make sure that we have sufficient people, enough people, but also the right people. We want to make sure that we have the written processes, because if we don't have that, we can't move up there. This is where analytics starts. So below here, we're just reporting numbers, hindsight information, nothing else as a reporter. As we get up here, we get our data visualization tools, start to look at trends, start to look at insight, start to look at foresight. That is what analytics is all about. So this is the roadmap to implement an analytics culture. These four pillars with mindset, process, people, and system. That's how we move up this analytics intelligence scale here, to going from reporting to do analysis, to provide insight, to provide foresight or predictions. Okay, I'm not going through this example here, but like just very, very short. This is a story about, this is a real story about a company. You can read more about that on our LinkedIn blog that I will give a link to at the end here. I've put the story in there, but it's basically a misalignment in what the management and the employee wanted to do. As a result of that, there was a misalignment between the mindset and the system, between the management and the staff, in that way, they failed. This company, big U.S. company, failed to implement an analytics culture due to this. Management wanted it. Management wanted finance to impact, and they want finance to have the DV tool. The staff, so the employees, they only want Excel. They felt that Excel was what was protecting them. They felt that Excel is hiding a lot of mistakes because there's so many sheets in there. So we could always blame the data, and Excel make them indispensable. Like you can't get a new guy in here because I'm the only guy who's sitting on this Excel sheet, and I'm the only guy who understands this Excel sheet, right? So we call this the death by Excel, this failure in this company. Okay, so let's move to the next one here, where we talk about the analytics journey. So we go back here to this figure that we looked at before, that we call the evolution of analytics. Sometimes we call this the finance maturity model. In this case, we will show the journey here for the analytics business partner. So we have looked at a lot of these things here, how we support moving to contribute, moving to influence, moving to impact. That's what we got from that model, where we looked at some of the steps here, where you look at the basics, the acumen, the intelligence, and the strategy. And then we looked at this from a system perspective, where we have Excel down here, data visualization, moving up to desktop physical tools, all the way up to a discovery visualization analytics tool. So all of these elements is kind of coming together in this graph here, where we move from a reporter to a commentator, to advisor, to a strategist, how we move from average to being good to being world-class. So all of this coming into this one single figure, where you can see, okay, what is it that I need to work on? I will be a little more specific later on when we start talking about benchmark, how we do these kind of things, what are the capabilities that we need here. But this is kind of all coming together in one slide. So with this one and the other one that I had before with the roadmap to an analytics culture, those two, print them out, put them on your table. Those two are how you get there from being a trusted scorekeeper to a strategic partner, playing that analytics business partner role. Okay, the power of benchmarking. The important thing when we want to do this journey that we looked at before, let me just go back to this one here. The important thing in this one is you need to understand where you are today and where you want to be in the future. Because if you don't understand where you are today, you don't know what to work on. If you think that you're a strategist today, then you're basically there. You probably don't have to work on a lot then. What our surveys and research show in this field is there's not a lot who's strategists. There's not a lot who's advisors. There's not a lot that are commentators. There's a lot that are reporters. We're talking about 70, 80% is sitting down here, whereas only a few percent is sitting up here. Really, really small, less than 10% is operating up here. The important thing is you want to make sure you understand where you are before you start to go on this journey. Because if you don't understand where you are, then you don't have a chance. You want to make sure you understand that baseline. So that's the first step. But you also want to make sure, what is your goal here? Where do you want to be in the future? That's equally as important. Okay, if you figure out through our surveys that you're a reporter today, where do you want to be in the future? You probably don't want to go all the way up to the strategist in one leap, right? Because you can't do that. Like, you need to move through these phases here, getting visualization tools, start to be better at this business acumen, start to be able to provide where did it happen. We look at trends now and contribute to decisions in the business, right? So there's elements here that we start to work on, but you can't leap from a reporter to a strategist. You need to build this up step by step, and there's tools here and there's capabilities to do that. I'll come back to that when we look at benchmarking. Okay, so when we go here to benchmarking, we're looking at traditional versus what we call next generation benchmarking. Traditional, if you look at a lot of the reports that is being sent out there by some of the bigger consulting companies, they focus on elements within efficiency, these finance ratios. So the number of reports each employee is printing, or the number of transactions that each employee is handling during quarter end, and trying to see if we can provide some efficiencies there with automations. That's fine, but it's leading to efficiencies. Efficiencies are good because we need efficiencies if we want to do analytics, because we need that time that we can yield out of those efficiencies. A lot of time, these big consulting companies, they're also looking at this. What's the finance cost compared to the company revenue? But it doesn't really say anything, right? Because what should that number be? If you have high finance costs compared to your company revenue, that might be good, but it might be bad. It all depends on how much value that you're creating from that finance cost. If it's extremely low, maybe it's also good, because you might add a ton of value to the business. But just the finance cost as a percent of the company revenue is not telling you anything about whether you're good or bad. But it's one of those benchmarks that is often used when we look at finance organization. Another thing here that is often looked at is how often is the reports that we send out to the business timely and accurate. So how many errors do we make in our reporting? That's another benchmark, and often very used, but it's not telling anything about value, because reporting, there's limited value in reporting. If we want to really add value, we're talking about insight and foresight. So what is next generation finance benchmarking all about? It's about this gap analysis that we're doing to figure out how much value does finance generate. If we can measure how much value that we're generating, then we know where we are compared to our competition. Let me show how we do that. We do that with an approach here where there's 4 steps. We're setting a baseline, so we understand where we are. Next, we define where we want to be in the future, the goal. The next one here is what needs to change to achieve that vision, so the goal, to move from that current persona, that could be the persona of the reporter or the commentator, which is our baseline, to the desired persona, which could be the role of the advisor or the strategist. That's what we call the gap analysis. So what needs to change in order to get there? We implement, and then we iterate. So we run this again. So after we've run a cycle here where we've seen our baseline, we have set some goals, we know what we need to work on. Now we implement all of that. Then we set new goals again. What is our new baseline now? After we've done this, hopefully we got to that desired outcome that we want to get to. So we get back here. What is our new baseline? We set some new goals. We do a new gap analysis. Benchmarking is a continuous process. It's not just a one-time. It's something that we need to do every year, maybe even more, to figure out where we are. So how do we do that? We do it with this radar diagram. So what this radar diagram is doing is there's a lot of capabilities here that is related to the reporter, the commentator, the advisor, and the strategist. Don't think too much about this right now, but just look at this and look at the data here. We have a scale from A to F, where F you're failing, and these are the grades, like the American grades in higher education, where the highest grade we can get is A. And in this case, this client that we work with here, they were pretty good, as you can see up here, as a reporter. They were pretty good as well as a commentator. They were passing. They're not in the white area here. But when they start getting down to the advisor, you can see they start having issues here. There's too much white space in between here in order to get out to this pass level as a grade D in this dark gray area here. And when they came all the way over here to the strategist, they were more or less not there. There's a few things here to notice. That is, they seem to be better at some of the softer skills, like communication, teamwork, acumen. We have communication over here, teamwork, acumen as well. They seem to be better than that than some of the more hardcore skills here, like analysis, analytics, risk management, business insight, innovating finance. So that is some of the things that we've often seen in the finance world. in the finance community that companies are relatively strong in the softer capabilities. How do we communicate with executives? How do we play that relation builder role into the business? How do we understand the business acumen? Can we talk the business language? Can we adjust our language to meet the business needs when we communicate? Do we adjust our language and use business terminologies to gain credibility when we communicate? All of these kind of things we're relatively good at. We're not there as an advisor and as a strategist for this company, but we are definitely better at the softer capabilities than the more hard and hardcore capabilities. So definitely there's a huge lack in analytics skills. Advanced analytics, big data analytics, these kind of things, prediction analytics, there's a huge gap there in finance. We haven't yet adapted that. If we move on then, what we showed in this company is this is where they were. So what is the baseline? They were a commentator today. We could see that from the data, right, that I show in that radar diagram. Where did they want to go? They want to be a strategist. So how do they do that? They do that with a gap analysis. So how do the gap analysis look like? We can see here, this is a gap analysis. This is data that we have from a similar company with the external benchmark for a similar company. This is what you could see from that similar company that they were out here. And this is basically where they wanted to go. They will, of course, like to get all the way out here, but they were happy if they just got to the industry standard. Okay. So how do we do that? In the implement phase here, we work on these capabilities. You will see the same here as you've seen before: basics, acumen, intelligence, strategy. This is from that ladder. The reporting, analysis, insight, and foresight, that is from the evolution of analytics. If you look at this, then the commentator here, they were okay there. They were okay at reporting timely and accurate and clean. They could communicate clear and concise. When they moved down here, they were okay at looking at trends, and they could dive into the data and pivot tables and stuff like that. They adjusted the language to meet the business needs. They built teamwork here. They were good at getting out into the organization, getting those connections that they need within their own organization, and they had an okay sense of the business operating model. So they were pretty good, and that's normally what we see with finance. Where they were struggling is these capabilities up here. So this one here is, and you will see some of the articles that we have written. This one here we call the capability ladder. So this is where we move up in our capabilities in order to add this analytics intelligence, and what are the competencies and the capabilities that we need to work on together with the tools. So I've added the tools here that we saw from that system slide as well. So this is what they need to work on. So in order to get an advisor, some of the things that they need to work on is insight. With reporting, analysis, insight, that could be finding those correlations in the data between your data, your performance, and maybe external performance or internal performance like customer satisfaction, stuff like that. Communicating, how do we get better at communicating with executives is some of the stuff that's up here. When we teamwork, we don't just teamwork in here, we teamwork with our own guys in our own business. Here we start to get this broader teamwork, broader collaboration in the organization. Acumen here, this was business operation model in-house. Now we need to start to understand when we get up here, the competitors and stuff like that. And so on and so on. That's how we build the capabilities and skills for the advisor, and the toolbox for the advisor is the desktop statistical tool, and so on. So with this, we can measure how much value that you're generating. If you're all the way up there, that's how you generate that value. And you have all the capabilities here. We could tell them what are the capabilities that you need to work on here if you want to get all the way up there. In this way, we can measure how much value that you're generating in the business, a term that is normally pretty difficult to measure, because what we do today is that we're talking about these ratios and finance as I talked about. What is our efficiencies? How many reports do we generate? How often do we report timely and accurate? But timely and accurate, there's no value in that. Of course, there's value in it, but it's low value. It's sitting down here with the reporter. That's where we need to be timely and accurate. Right? When we move up here, that's where we need to provide insight and predictions. Okay, so this is the implement phase, right? We want to implement this. Then we come back at the end when we have implemented this, and we look at this and we evaluate where we are right now. So after a year, these guys is coming back And then we are testing again and figuring out, have they now captured all of these elements? Because the first step is that they want to get in here to the advisor role. Have they figured out this desktop statistical tools? Have they got all these capabilities? In that way, we can help companies to develop in this direction of becoming an analytics business partner. Okay, we are more or less there. So this is kind of our approach. So we do a lot of these articles, research papers, and books. We have this implementing analytics culture for data-driven decisions. That is kind of the foundation. Then after that, companies come and they ask about this benchmark to figure out where they are. And then the final one is that we can train them. They can also go external into training, but we can train them at what we call the Analytics Academy that is held twice a year, hosted by a group that is called the JPK Group. I've put some of that stuff in here. You can see the academy in here, benchmark here, and the book here, and a lot of the articles you will find on this Analytics Business Partner Forum on LinkedIn. If you want to connect, there's some stuff here as well with connections. Stay connected. Link up to me on LinkedIn. I'm posting a lot of things in an article series and a few research papers that we have gotten out there over the last few months. With that, I'm opening up for questions.
Yes, if anyone has any question, they can speak. I think Taha Shakib, he sent one message, one question in the message inbox. Hi, as an individual finance professional, how do you go about becoming the finance professional of the future when the current organization does not have the structure and mindset that supports it?
Yeah. So in the book we have a section about that one. Either if you want to go on this analytics business partner journey, and your organization just want to be this old-fashioned reporting and this culture good enough is good enough, you can do two things. You can either stay in the company or you can find another company. We write about that in the book. You want to find that company that fits into your mindset. If you don't share the mindset with the company, then it's never going to change. I've talked to a lot over the years who's come to us and asked, what should we do? We would like this, and we go to your Analytics Academy and we understand how to do the advanced analytics now. We come back into our organization, and the only thing that our organization wants us to do is to do reporting and simple analysis. They don't want us to do anything else in that. If you want to develop in your career, you probably want to find another company. I know that it's a kind of a tough call. So either you do that, or else you go back and educate these guys in how you implement this culture.
Okay, Hardik, he has one question. You mentioned, there's I think one more. Yeah, you mentioned the skills required to be a strategist, but how to gain these skills?
We would say come to the Analytics Academy. That's where you learn the skills of stepping up this capability ladder. There's also other things out there. But I think the way that I've gained this is not to necessarily take a ton of training. I've done a little training external, but I have also done a ton of self-study. I've looked at this and said, okay, I want to be able to do Monte Carlo simulation, because I learned in university that with Monte Carlo simulation, you can start to develop probabilities for how possible it is for an event to happen. If you can do these kind of things, if you can talk about these kind of things, then you start to self-study that. There's a lot of things out there where you can self-study, but Google is the first place to go. So there's a ton of things that we can do as individuals without necessarily having to pay for it. I think LinkedIn is a good place as well. There's a lot of content out there. The challenge that I have with LinkedIn, and the biggest problem with LinkedIn, that is a lot of people is talking about where we need to go. And this, whether we call it analytics business partner, whatever it is, next generation finance or the modern CFO, or next generation CFO, agile finance, these terms, everyone is talking about that is where we need to go, but nobody's talking about how to go there. How to go there is what we have put into the book, and that's what we're teaching at the academy. That's how to get there. What are the skills? Okay, I'm seeing more questions here. Let me just take a few of them. What is the best DVA tool? Okay, I'll give my opinion. My opinion might be biased, but before you go and buy a DVA tool, you want to make sure that you have all the pillars, right? If you don't have the people, you can buy the tool, but you will never be able to use the tool because the people don't know how to use the tool. If you buy the tool and the company doesn't have the mindset that have that old-fashioned reporter mindset, like you can use the tool, but the tool is the information or the insight and foresight you can bring out of the tool is never going to be used. Again, last one, if you have the processes and your processes are crap, you haven't documented your processes, you have a guy who can operate this analytics tool, but guess what? Tomorrow he leaves the company. Nobody can take over that task. Process is important. You need all of them, right? So that's my first comment there. But if you want to buy, what is the best DVA tool? I think, and again, I said I'm biased, but Robert that I founded the Finance Analytics Institute with, he's a software developer. He is having his own software. He developed this specific for finance, and there's nothing else out there that is developed specific for finance. So check it out. It's called Aurora Prediction, and the software is called Lights. It's extremely powerful, and you don't have to be a data scientist to operate it. That's a beautiful thing, and that is coming back a little to Mohammed, some of the discussion that we have had, like, should we be a data scientist? No, you shouldn't be a data scientist. I've laid out how you build an analytics culture here. You don't have to be a data scientist. The important thing for you is that you get a tool that can do the exact same thing as a data scientist can do, right? Where it's so intuitive the way that the tool operates, but there's so much analytical power behind it. And I'll say Aurora Prediction is the best one I've seen. There's a lot out there that can do that. There's Big ML as well. There's some free stuff there from Big ML. There's kind of a quite popular company that is called Alteryx, but they are a little complex to use, especially Alteryx. I think there you need some capabilities to connect data, databases, stuff like that, some coding. The beautiful thing with Aurora Prediction is that you don't need any of these. You can basically jump into it if you just have a little skill within statistics. So that's my answer to that one. What else do we have here?
I think they're asking for our Coursera EDX good platforms to learn. Like they want to know the learning resources, I think, mostly.
Yeah, the problem is, and that's one of the reasons why we in finance are so far behind, and one of the reasons why we created this Finance Analytics Institute is because we were talking to a lot of conferences about these things. So the next generation finance and advanced analytics, prediction analytics, these kind of things. And people keep coming up to us afterwards asking, how do we do that? How do we get started? And that's really the challenge that we have right now. There's not a lot out there that is talking about that. There's a lot where they're talking about some of the more simple stuff here with data visualization, like visualize data, be better at statistics, do these mean, max, median stuff, these kind of things. But there is not a lot out there where they're talking about advanced analytics and how we use big data analytics, utilizing artificial intelligence. And that's one of the challenges, I would say that's one of the challenges that there is right now in the market. We're trying to do that, but we only do that right now in North America. There's been a lot where they have asked us, can we do this with web classes? And we might go there, but it's not on our radar right now for the short term. But in the longer term, we want to do some web class that we can get out there broader. But right now, there's not a lot of it. The way that I got started on this was to open my books from university and to start to do my own research on the internet, Google stuff, looking at YouTube, these kind of things.
And one more question from my side, Jesper, like when we talk about moving to the level of advisor or strategist, so to what extent we should include non-finance data or like non-financial data in our analytics, and how we can integrate that data with our financial data?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's different things that I can give some of the examples that I've looked at. Is non-financial data important here? So stuff that is not our data, like we sit on the P&L in the company, right? We have the revenue and we have all the expenses. But what about all the other data that is floating around out there that is probably going to be able to tell us something? I've mentioned before here customer satisfaction. That is not financial data. It's non-financial data. It's sitting out there. It's ops data or it's marketing data or sales data, whatever it is. But it's something, if you can find those links between the non-financial data and your financial data, then you can start to say something about what is the value drive, what is the business value drive for your company. Again, I come back to the example of the correlation. If you can say that there's a correlation between customer satisfaction and your financial data, then you can say, okay, if you can work on customer satisfaction, that will have a positive influence on your financial performance, and you can quantify how much that influence is. Everyone will say, yeah, if customer satisfaction go up, my revenue should go up. But now we can quantify that because we've seen the correlation. So that could be one thing. Another thing could be to look at our sales organization. Non-financial data there could be HR data, the tenure of the sales organization, how experienced are our sales guys. There's a lot of business where we will see more experienced sales guys who will sell more. If you can find that connection as well, that cluster analysis where you can figure out if you have more than 10 years of experience in this business, you will be able to sell this much. Because in that way, you can look at what is your tenure here, because your tenure is really going to drive your sales then. If you lose all of your experienced guys, you can't do the same amount of sales next year as you have done this year. So that's another thing. Tenure, that's HR data. Then you can also see if you can find correlation to the external market. One of the things that I've done with predictive analytics is to find a connection in my previous company between our performance and an asset out in the external market. It's not our financial data, that asset. It's like it could be a stock price or it could be the volume of something that is highly correlated to our performance. If we can do that, we can say something about what is driving our business, but we can also tell something about what is the prediction here of our business if this asset out in the external market is predicted. So stuff like that, like it's highly important that we go beyond our own financial data when we're looking for the insight and the foresight. We can do that with our financial data, but we can become even more powerful if we add non-financial data and link that up to our financial data.
Okay. I think we have covered maximum questions. So if anyone has any more questions or any clarification, I think Jesper is available on LinkedIn. I will share the profile link with all of them. I think they can connect with you, and any question, I think most of the questions have been cleared, and I think there in the mind of finance professional, there are lots of questions regarding the data science, and they need to know like how much they need to learn data science or whether they need to become a data scientist. I think these are the main which are in.
So to that one, I'll like my final comment to the data scientist is, I think that we will get there one day, maybe, but for now, that's not where the focus should be in finance. Like we can see right now that we reporters at the maximum commentators, we need to figure out how we get to that next step where we use some of the stuff that is available for us, like correlation, cluster analysis, statistical elements to say something about the business, predictive analytics. Like you can do predictive analytics in Excel if you want to do that. It's not amazing, but there's a model out there if you want to look into that's called the whole winter model, the whole winter framework. That one can predict stuff. That's where I started my predictive journey. So there's a ton of things that we can do with the tools that we have available right now. But if you really want to go up there where we start to predict at more than just high level, but can predict down in the entire organization, we need that analytical power that we get from a DVA tool. But data scientists, I know a lot of people is talking about it. I've seen out in your region as well that there's some education around data science and how finance can become a data scientist. I think it's fine, but it's not. I don't think that's where we're going. And for me, I have tried to hire some of these guys, but first of all, they're too expensive. That's one element of it. But also, they don't want to come and work for me. They don't want to come and work for finance. If you're a data scientist, you want to be a consultant, or else you want to be involved in developing some very advanced stuff in a company. You don't necessarily want to come and work for finance. So I think that's the challenge that we have right now. We can't get them to work for us. And we can come very, very far ourselves if we do this with the 4 pillars. But we need some investments. We need investment in people. we need investment in systems, we need the leadership with the right mindset, and then we want to make sure that we have the right processes with data governance in place and decision governance.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a very good and practical roadmap, what you already mentioned. So thank you very much, Jesper, for your time and for presenting this insightful session. And thank you all the attendees as well for taking their time to attend this session. So we are expecting some more sessions in the future, and we will be in touch with Jesper for our future events. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Jesper.
Thank you.